All right, class. This is the tutorial that we went over for InDesign last week. So this way, hopefully this will help anybody that needs to reference how to set up a file and how to get started. All right, so you got InDesign open and you got to set up the file. So right here, the units, we're going to select inches. And then we're going to 8 by 10 is the size. For this project, it's going to be 20 pages in total. For your margins, I think a ½ inch is insanely large. So we're going to drop it down to, actually, let's do a quarter. And then for a bleed, a 1/8 of an inch. All right, you can ignore slug. Okay, so we create. And what you will have, let me pull this in. You'll have all your pages here, right? So page 1 all the way down to 20. And then a spread are 2 pages side by side. All right, so each one of your lyrics is going to be on one spread. So you can see here we have a cover for page 1, and then song 1, song 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then the back cover is page 20. All right. All right. All right, to start, bringing in a simple photo. Now, with InDesign, like I told you in class, you have to remain extremely organized with your files. If you don't, you'll have issues later on when you go to print. You do not print from InDesign, but rather you go to export to a PDF. So to bring in an image into your file, you simply have your image sitting here. Maybe it's in a folder, but when you bring it in, drag, you'll see that that image is connected to my cursor right now. So you click and drag, and then that image sits inside here. Now, everything in InDesign has to have a container, right? So right now, we have a blue box sitting here, and then there is a red box, which is the actual image, all right? So the blue box, you can heavily crop the image. All right, so you can then control the size. So if you plan on having an image a different or cropped differently, you don't have to do that in Photoshop. You can simply have that achieve that same thing within InDesign. When you have the image in here, you want to make sure that it maintains the high res. So where's my, right here. All right, so when you have your links and you have this selected, you'll see that it has all this information in here. It tells me, what it is, the fact I did not change it to CMYK. But here is where you want to pay attention: the actual resolution and the effective resolution. So basically, this was dragged from the internet, not converted over to high res. But because I'm using it smaller than what the actual size is, the effective resolution is higher than 72. It's 277. If I was simply to bring this in and just click on the screen, it will make it the size of what it is at that resolution. So if I had saved it as a 300 DPI image, it would have been smaller, and it would say actual resolution 300, effective PPI 300. So that's what happens. So now you can see when I make this smaller, you can see now the actual never changes because that's whatever it was set at, but the effective DPI is now 230. All right, So you want to pay attention to that when you're changing around the different sizes. Um, but yeah, so that's how we bring in images. All right. Now, remaining um, organized, you have to copy over all of the images along with your InDesign file. All right. So right now everything is fine. You can see my path is all set. It's telling me where it is. And let's say I delete this or I forget to copy it over. And then the next class, I open up my file. And down here, I'm going to have a red dot with an error. So if I click on this image, you can see there's a question mark here, question mark there, and it's missing, right? It tells you, there's nowhere for that to be found. You will not be able to print this. You will not be able to export this, right? So you have to make sure that you remain organized with all your files. So this way, when you are done with your file and you're ready to print or send and submit the PDF, you will have no issues when submitting it or exporting it to a PDF. All right. All right. Adding text. So InDesign, very similar to Illustrator with everything that we can do. The one main difference is in Illustrator, one of the ways that you can add text is just by simply clicking on the screen. And like in InDesign, everything has to have a container, right? So that's not going to work. So what you need to do is you need to click and drag, and then your text will sit inside this text box. All right. But all the other tools that we used in Illustrator is available in InDesign. So there's no new thing that you have to learn. The only difference is you can't just click on a straight line. If you want to click and create a shape and then type on a path, you can do so. All right. If you want to create a shape, you can see it sits inside the shape as well. So all the things that you've already done in Illustrator is possible in InDesign, even converting to an outline. So you have this text here. And then Command Shift O, just like in Illustrator. And now this text is now in outline. All right. All right. So now when you're creating individual boxes of lyrics, you have a couple options to, all right, hold on a sec. Let me grab, actually. So you have a couple options when you want to create columns of text. And there's advantages and disadvantages of each of these two options that I'm going to show you. The first, the simplest, is up here on the top. We have this icon that looks like these column graphs. And there's a 1 next to it. If we hit 2, it breaks up that text into 2 columns. All right? And then, of course, you can go as much as you want. The value underneath, that's the space in between your gutter, in between those 2 columns. So if we increase that, we increase the space of the column in the inside. All right. Now, the other way is to have this as 2 separate text boxes. So kind of in Illustrator, how I showed you how to link text boxes, same thing. So I'm going to make a copy of this because I want it the same size. And then down here, you can see that there's a little red box with a plus symbol. You click it, click inside the next text box, and now this spills over into there. All right. So as this gets smaller, this drops in, and you can continue with the text linking all the way through. Now this is useful when you're creating, like, say, a magazine that has a lot of text that's going from page to page, because this can even go on to the next spread entirely, and it's still connected. All right. So the advantage of having the text boxes linked this way is that you have more control of each individual column. The advantage of the other way is obviously it's much quicker. But it really depends on what it is that you're looking to do and achieve. That's going to be the best method for you. All right. All right. All right. So some of the other things that we probably didn't discuss too often because of the other projects we did in Illustrator is shapes that text sometimes takes on. All right. So let me turn off my frame edges so we can see just the type. So what you want when you have left alignment text is you want the text to always be kind of like going in this consistent in and out motion, right? Like this. What you want to avoid is stuff like this that starts to happen, where it ends up creating like a smooth shape that becomes distraction. All right. The other thing that I want to do is turn off hyphenation. Some of the other things you want to do, let me try and get one to happen. I'm not going to get one to happen, am I? Nope. All right, let me just fake it quick. Let me delete this. And then so you want to avoid having single words that sit all by itself on that last line of text. All right. What these are widows, and they end up causing an issue with the readability. All right. So when this happens, you want to sometimes adjusting your tracking of one line, adjusting the like a force return somewhere or further up to help break up that single line. But you always want to make sure when you're working on your type, you always want to make sure you have multiple text at that last line and not have a single one. So that there is called a widow within the column of text. Another widow is when you have this, having it sit all by itself. All right, you want to avoid that. That's another widow sitting on its own column and it's separated from the rest of the paragraph. That you want to avoid. Then you also want to avoid orphans, which are there. Single line of text starting the paragraph separated from the rest of it. So you just want to make sure that you adjust whatever text that you're working on. But again, these rules here are more for like copy text. If you do end up laying out your lyrics in a way that kind of takes the form of a paragraph reading, then these rules would apply. But ideally, I feel like how you end up breaking up the lyrics is going to be contained in a way of like differently, that really this probably will not become an issue. All right, some of the other things like with the alignment, like we have left, center, right, and then these are the forced justified text, right? So we have left, center, right. Honestly, I feel if you're doing this, you're usually going to always end up using that left justified. And then you'll have justify all, which will space out that last line, which becomes a bit much. There are times when you're laying your design out that would make sense to have this, but not when it's a readable paragraph text. All right. All right. Spaces before paragraphs. So there's no rule of how much space you need when you're starting a new paragraph. Generally speaking, you want to make sure that it's less than whatever the space is if you're using 2 columns. That's really the only rule. Because right now you can see, if we're reading this, it's closer to this column of text than it is to the next next space for the text itself, for the next line of text. That's the only time that you can't have that. So if I wanted this tight column in between the 2 columns, tight gutter, I cannot have a full space. That's just not going to work. And let's say I definitely have to have some sort of indicator that this is a new paragraph, and I really don't want to create a tab. So what you can do is up here, you have this option that you can create a new space that is hot, like you control basically the space of what it is. You can see here I can increase it whatever I want, and that when I hit a new return, hit return for a new paragraph, now you can see that we have that space there. It's very minor, but it's definitely more than what our leading is. All right, so now that is less than this, so this would be the way to go to create that space. Okay. So again, if I wanted it to be more, then I'm going to need to increase the column gutter. All right. Okay. All right. So here's the other thing. All right. So by default, our text aligns itself to the top of our text boxes. So this is fine if we want to have this, and if we wanted this to be even, now these 2 text boxes are perfect. But if I wanted something that was off centered, right? So I had this works if I wanted to keep it to the top. But if I wanted to be at the bottom, you don't want to try and have to like figure out, all right, I want to make sure that this is lined up perfectly, right? What you can do is you can select both of these text boxes, hit Command B, and right here by default is top. So if I go to bottom and then I make sure these 2 are lined up, now that is all set. All right, so that's an option that when you're creating text and you want things to sit in a different area within your text box, you can use that Command B and change it. The other thing is, let's say these are sitting perfectly the same height, and let's get it to, yeah, all right. So now we have this here, so we're 1 line short of this. But I want to make sure that this text box and this text box are equal on the top and bottom. So you can use that justified option that will push that text from the bottom to the top, like so. So this way then it's like a more even alignment of that text. So you're looking at the text boxes, as these edges and shapes are lining up. All right, so that's another option of when you're trying to justify the design in a way that it is creating that alignment flush top and bottom. All right. Next thing is text wrap. So say, do I have anything in here that can, yeah. All right. So let's say I have this and I want this to be right in the middle. And I wanted to push the text away from this. You can, all right, where's my text wrap? All right. So with this selected, you have different options for how it will be pushed away. And so you can see it ends up selecting the white area around this to push the text away. It can also, if we have, say we have certain amount of text that we want to create like a pull quote. Right? So as we move these around, it pushes a type away. All right. This here, you could use this option here to detect edges, because right now it's creating a texture wrap around the white part too, and maybe I want just the shape itself. So you can let this detect edges, and now you can see it moved it around like so. And now it's moving that text box away from the red edges that InDesign is detecting. All right. All right. So this all works to push your type away. Wherever you put it, it's going to interact with that text. Now, if say we have something like we have an image sitting here. Actually, wait. Instead of doing that, let me bring back in this image. All right. So I'm going to have this sitting here with a text wrap. And then I want to put this text, for some reason I want it to be as close to this as I can, or even if I wanted to put it on top of it. You can see that because of the text wrap on this, it keeps getting affected by that text wrap from the image itself. So there are times that you want, something to interact with something that has a text wrap and it won't happen for you, right? So if you hit Command B again, where we use this for the alignment of the paragraph, to the left, there's this checkbox for ignore text wrap. With that selected, now this text can move around wherever I want it to, and it's not affected by that text wrap. All right. This is useful, especially when you're doing pull quotes, and there's times that you want to have like these enlarged quotation marks at the beginning and end. You want them to kind of work into that layout, but not affected by the text wrap itself. So there are times that that becomes very useful. Okay. The other thing, by default, you have your frame edges showing. So it has like a white, I'm sorry, it has a blue outline around all of your text and all your elements. It's useful to see the edges sometimes, but when you're laying out your design, honestly, it becomes a little bit much, and it's easier or stronger to design without them. So to turn them off, you go to View, Extras, Hide Frame Edges. So this way then, the only time you see that blue edge is when you actually select the object itself. Okay, that we're doing next class. Swatches. So we talked about how to set up color. So here's our color panel. Here's our swatches. All right, so when you start a new file, these are the only colors that InDesign will give you. Everything has to have a swatch. So we already talked about how to create swatches in Illustrator. The same thing for InDesign, all right? So you end up choosing what your color is that you want. And when you have the color that you want, then you create new, and there's our swatch itself, all right? So then if this becomes that color, and we decide to change that color, then you can see it changes that color wherever it was being used. So the same thing that we did with the other project, creating the swatches and the character styles. All of that is the same in InDesign. Nothing is different about how to set that up, okay? I'm not making you use character styles for this project, only because I want you to approach every single spread uniquely for each of those songs. So because of that, I feel the type and how it's treated is going to be very different, and it kind of doesn't make sense to create styles for that. All right, page numbers. So when we create page numbers, you end up, having a footer down here, and we're on sitting on page 1, and then we end up having page 2. So if these are sitting here, and you go through all of your pages and go 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, that really is fine for a project like this that's only 20 pages. But let's imagine for a second that you have a 200-page magazine you're creating. You're not going to do that. You're not going to sit there and spend the time to put 1, 2, and so on, because there are times where, page 2 and 3 is no longer going to be page 2 and 3. I want to move it now down into the middle of the document. So now this isn't page 1 anymore. Now it's page 8, right? So you're not going to now all of a sudden say, all right, now I got to go through and renumber everything. So what you do with the page numbers is, instead of having the number itself, you're going to go up to Type, Insert Special Character, Markers, and Current Page Number. This will automatically put what the page number is for you. So now, same thing on this side. All right, so now if I copy this and put it on another page, it automatically changes it for me, right? 6, 8, all right? But there's another way that you can even save yourself even more time than that too. So let's look at your pages over here. Up here you have a master, all right? You can have multiple masters. Default, we have letter A. But so here, anything that we put into the master will automatically appear on every single page, all right? So here's our spread. Let's get rid of these. And I'm going to paste back in those page numbers. Now you can see right here it's a letter A. This is a placeholder for that page number. All right, so now when I go into page 8, there's page 8, and it's locked. All right, and then you can see it's on all the other pages as well, including, unfortunately, our back cover and our front cover, which we do not want. All right, so what you do is you hold Command Shift and drag across that number, and it releases it from the background. So now I can delete it. Doesn't affect anything else. And this is useful because, let's say that, I have a background design. Let's say I decided I want to have this. be in the background, right? And it's sitting behind my text, and it's affecting the page number. All right. So what I can do, there's two things. You can create different layers, just like in Illustrator and Photoshop, and then put this layer behind. If you're doing a design that is not complicated and doesn't require layers, then let me quickly. All right. So we have a layer here. Create a new layer. Drop it below our layer 1, and then we're going to cut this and place it on that layer. So now it sits behind that. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is what we just did with the cover and the back cover. We click and drag holding Command Shift, and then it releases that text box that we can then bring to the front on top of the file. All right. And then something like this probably would end up changing it to a different color anyway. All right. So that becomes useful when you're doing a lot of different page textures that you want to put into your design. Now let's say that we deleted it and we change our mind. We no longer want to have a background to this page, and now we lost our page number. If you just click on your master and drag and drop on top of it, it brings it back. It doesn't affect anything in your layout, but it ends up bringing and reverting that page style back to what it was before. All right. Okay. And then the same thing too. So in the master, if you're going to end up having other text that sits in your design, whatever you put in your layout will show up in the master. Okay. Okay. That's it. There's a few other things that I wanted to go over, but it's going to be for later. This here would get you started on the actual layout of the design, and then there's smaller things that I wanted to show you that is more specific, that would only take like 10 minutes or so in class to go over. But yeah, hopefully this helps anyone that are using these tutorials. But if you have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to ask. All right, so hope you guys are well, and I will see you in class later today.